I'm Duncan Lievi, and welcome to very last minute SummerSlam 2020 predictions preview. Now, I know this is very last minute because the event starts in a few hours. With that said, the first thing I'd like to preface this by sharing with you the structure of the predictions, which is not that complicated. These are my WrestleMania 36 predictions. I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but it's based on two categories. One is what I want to see happen, and the other is what I think will happen. And the latter category, which is what I want to see happen, is considered to be the official one. So at SummerSlam, my official predictions were for 13 of the 18 matches. I forgot the other ones were happening when I was watching it. So the official predictions were Becky Lynch, Otis, Goldberg, I'm glad I was proven wrong, McIntyre, Daniel Bryan, The Undertaker, John Morrison, The Fiend, Aleister Black, Sasha Banks, Kevin Owens, Rhea Ripley, and Edge. So with those 13 matches, I got 4 wrong, so 9 out of 13, not too bad. The same concept of the 8 matches announced for SummerSlam 2020, I will be sharing first what I want to see happen and why, and then what I think will happen. Sometimes those two are aligned, sometimes not. So let's get started. The matches are as follows. Bayley versus Asuka for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Sasha Banks versus Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. MVP versus Apollo Crews, US title match. Mandy Rose versus Sonya Deville. Loser leaves WWE, street fight. Then there's Seth Rollins versus Dominick Mysterio for Dominick's debut, and it'll be a street fight, and I believe Rey Mysterio is going to be in Dominick's corner, and Murphy is going to be in Seth Rollins' corner. We have the Street Profits against Andrade and Angel Garza for the Tag Team Championships, Raw Tag Team Championships. Then there's a Universal Championship match between The Fiend and champion Braun Strowman, followed by what I hope will be the main event, being WWE Champion Drew McIntyre defending his title against Randy Orton. Now, as for the predictions, we start off with Bayley versus Asuka SmackDown Women's Championship match. What do I want to see happen? I want to see Bayley win the championship. Why? Because she's had the title for a long time, and I do like it when sometimes there are long title reigns, especially when it comes to the SmackDown Women's Championship, because Charlotte beat Bayley, and then Bayley beat Charlotte for the title again, I think a couple weeks later. And it was an annoying instance of the WWE just playing hot potato, and typically the person who benefits from this is Charlotte, whose title count just keeps going up. I think she's won, 11 championships now? Crazy. But anyway, with that said, I want to see Bayley victorious, and I also think she will be. So this is my official prediction, being that Bayley is going to retain her title with help from Sasha Banks, which would lead us smoothly into the next match, that being Sasha Banks versus Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. Now, what do I want to see happen in an absolute secluded environment, isolated incident? I want Sasha to have a successful championship defense, because she's not had one ever. I believe the reputation in her career is that she's never been booked. That's the correct terminology. She's never been booked to defend her title successfully, and I would like to see that change. But what I actually want to see happen, still want to see happen in terms of the storyline, is Sasha Banks losing the title, because that would set up the program a bit toward Bayley versus Sasha Banks, which would also direct the program between the two as opponents rather than teammates on SmackDown, with the SmackDown Women's Championship the focus, the championship with a currently more significant reign, as in Bayley has been reigning as champion for a very long time, so if and when that championship changes hands, that would mean more. So what do I want to see happen? I do want to see Sasha lose, which means my official prediction is also, that doesn't mean, but I still believe that's what's going to happen. My official prediction is that Asuka is going to beat Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's Championship. That's 2. Then we go on to MVP versus Apollo Crews for the U.S. Championship. What do I want to see happen? I want to see MVP win the U.S. Championship. Why? Because MVP is synonymous with the U.S. Championship. I think other than Dean Ambrose, MVP had the longest U.S. Championship reign, and he was a pretty damn good champion. I would not mind seeing that happen. As for character reasons, I think MVP is much more engrossing than Apollo Crews. Apollo Crews is just another babyface. And I'm glad he won the championship, but I would like to see him lose and then win it again. So, it pads the totals, but it also gives MVP a sort of recognition for the work he's done ever since he returned at the Royal Rumble. And who knew that MVP's return would be probably the second most influential return at the Royal Rumble after Edge, in terms of how significant the impact will be throughout the year. And he's made more appearances, he's been part of more storylines, he's been part of the most interesting faction in the company, so to recognize that, I would like to see MVP win. Also because Crews is just such a unidimensional babyface, like I mentioned. What do I think is going to happen, and this is my official prediction, I think Crews is going to retain. Now, Mandy Rose versus Sonya Deville. What do I want to see happen? You know how Shayna Baszler has occupied that upper mid-card role on Raw? As in she's primed to face Asuka or whoever, or Sasha Banks, whoever the champion is after this SummerSlam match. She's already made that clear. She's been positioned very strong. She almost beat up Nia Jax on Raw Underground this past week, and she's been beating up people randomly. She also beat up the Ninjas on Raw. So she's been positioned strongly, reminding people that she's a legitimate fighter, and she deserves all the reputation that she's now finally regaining after losing to Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. So you know how that position has been given to her on Raw? I want Sonya Deville to have that role on SmackDown, and she has the same believability attached to her because of her MMA background, and also because she's been performing amazingly. Given how lackluster the women's division has been treated on SmackDown, this is the only purple patch in that storytelling. That being how well Sonya Deville has been on the mic and how good of a story she's told. And Mandy Rose is a perfect foil. They have history. Mandy Rose has become a bit irrelevant after after the writers decided to write Otis off television, and the briefcase is not mentioned. They're just romancing somewhere. And then one fine day, Sonya Deville just cuts her hair, and then everything is just ruined. But then again, the added stipulation of loser leaves WWE is what makes this different. So, what I want to see happen, I want Sonya Deville to win, which would also mean, by stipulation, that Mandy Rose takes another vacation. Big deal. She's been gone for a while. Even though Mandy Rose is, in her own right, become better. But that's not the point. The point is, protect Sonya. That's what I want to see happen. What do I think is going to happen? This is where the real life situation rears its ugly head. That being the stalker who got convicted, the person who was trying to kidnap Sonya Deville in real life, not in kayfabe. So that, I believe, has a very deep impact on a person, and she would like to take some time off to just get her bearings, shake off the cobwebs figuratively, and return after recuperating from this event, this incident, this very regrettable incident. So with that real life incident in mind, I think Mandy Rose is going to win, which would give Sonya Deville some time to be away and come back stronger, hopefully. Then we have the Street Profits against Zelina's Boys, which is Angel Garza and Andrade. Now, this is a match where the lesser evil has to be picked for me. Why? Because I think the people involved are all very gifted. I believe every one of those gentlemen is very gifted. But their characters, especially the Street Profits, they're just too comical. Especially given the fact that they've been coming out of that cinematic match at Extreme Rules, I believe. No, at Backlash. At Backlash, where they had that It's ridiculous. Tozawa's ninjas and the crocodile and the garbage. Anyway, I'm not even going to acknowledge that too much. So anyway, I don't want the Street Profits as champions. I know that they're gifted performers, especially Montez Ford. I really hope that he's given another gimmick in the not so distant future, so that he can learn to be a more serious character. Maybe he has that potential. It's just that we don't know that because he's not been presented to us in that way. So I want that to change at some point. Because even after a goddamn poisoning, Montez Ford just showed up 2 weeks later, and he beat the people up. But that was preceded by Angelo Dawkins saying, "Oh, he wants the smoke." No, if someone is coming back from a damn poisoning, there doesn't have to be any words. Words don't have to be exchanged. Just attack them. But anyway, as you can see, I'd want the team of Andrade and Garza to win, and I think they are going to. That is my official prediction. That they beat the Street Profits to win the Raw Tag Team Championships. Then we have Seth Rollins versus Dominick Mysterio. What do I want to see happen? This might not be the most popular decision, but I want Seth Rollins to win. Because no matter how much babyface potential and how much of a sympathetic storyline Dominick Mysterio has been a part of, you can't beat a 4-time WWE World Champion in your first match. You just can't. No matter the stipulation, no matter how much interference you get, there's always going to be a black mark. Not that it matters too much in kayfabe, but Seth Rollins being defeated by someone who hasn't had an official match, not even against a fellow rookie, just nothing. His first match is at SummerSlam against a world champion, one of the premier stars of this generation in Seth Rollins, and he beats him. Just no. I don't want to see that happen. No matter how much help Rey Mysterio gives to his son, and no matter how much help Murphy provides Seth Rollins. Regardless, I want Seth Rollins to win. What I think is going to happen, I think Rey Mysterio is going to help his son. I think Murphy is going to be sidelined because of Rey Mysterio as well, and Seth Rollins. The stipulation for this match, thankfully, it's realistic because Seth said that in a traditional wrestling match, "I will murder you." I'm paraphrasing, but he's correct. So I was glad to see that made part of the storyline. But even in a street fight, just Seth Rollins can't lose. But what I think is going to happen, my official prediction, is that he will lose. Because it's a very good underdog narrative that is necessary in the story, because Seth has been winning everything. Seth beat Rey, and Seth was the cause for Rey's eye being taken out of his eye socket. Globe luxation, I think that's what they're calling it, and that's what it's called. I'm not really sure if that's it. So anyway, I believe Seth Rollins is going to lose and Dominick Mysterio is going to win his debut match. Now, if I say it like that, it sounds good. So there you go. That's the whole point. Entertainment. And feel good, putting a smile on people's faces. Now, the two last matches, the two World Championship matches. The two most interesting matches on the show. Starting with The Fiend versus Braun Strowman. Now, what do I want to see happen in this? I want this to be a very complex narrative, because Braun Strowman, even though he's still very robotic and very strange in his way of speaking, I believe that the whole overarching narrative of The Fiend changes people, which has been mentioned over and over, so you know that it's also happening. I want that to be front and center, which means that the championship actually changing hands is not as important as what Braun does to get there. To get there as in to retain his championship. So I want to see this story unfold where the Fiend forces Braun to maybe attack Alexa Bliss / Sister Abigail, and to test his limits as to how far he'll go to retain his championship. And I want to see Braun being pushed over the edge. And this is going to disregard the theories going into the match that Braun and Alexa are actually in cahoots, and Braun is saying he doesn't care about Alexa because he wants to protect Alexa, which would be good by itself. But I want to see Braun being pushed over the edge, and he then actually becomes evil. It's a heel turn because the Fiend changes people. That's what I want to see happen. So Braun, what I want to see happen is Braun attacking Alexa, shoving her out of the way, and then finishing off the Fiend while Braun covers the Fiend. And I want to see the Fiend laughing, doing his crazy maniacal laugh, which has also been added to his character, as seen in the previous Thunderdome SmackDown. So that when he's being covered, even when Braun is covering the Fiend is laughing. So we have a similar, when Dark Knight ended, they said the Joker won, even though Batman saved people, but Harvey Dent is dead, and the people. So you know what I'm talking about. The Joker lost, but he still won. So I want the Fiend to lose the match, not gain the championship, but he changed Braun so significantly. That's the narrative I want to see. As to what I think will happen, I think the Fiend is going to win, because Braun's championship reign has been just bad. I think everyone is privy to the fact that he was not supposed to win the championship from Goldberg, which is also the reason why I picked Goldberg to win the championship in my WrestleMania predictions. I'm glad I was proven wrong, by the way. But the Fiend just needs the title. In practical terms, I think the Fiend is going to win, because there's a certain degree of legitimacy which the title assumes when it's in the hands of someone that has mystique or a previous track record of being amazing in storytelling. And even though I seriously doubt how proficient of a in-ring worker the Fiend can be allowed to be, I don't doubt his mystique and how well the character has been portrayed by Bray Wyatt. So that's my official prediction. The Fiend is going over. And finally, we come to the main event. Drew McIntyre, the WWE Championship, defending his championship against the Legend Killer, Randy Orton. Easily the most interesting match on this show. There's a aspect to this narrative which is very problematic, even though it's very interesting. Interesting in the sense that you are not entirely sure what's going to happen here. It's not an obviously predictable outcome. That said, okay, maybe I should do this. Okay, I'll just do this. It's a pretty long video as it is. In this storyline, McIntyre and Orton have somewhat of a backstory in that McIntyre has been saying he doesn't see Orton as a leader. He sees Orton as a selfish person who got away with mistakes because of his name value and how much of a household name he was because of the Orton name, and that Orton messed up previously and he wasn't fired because he was the chosen one in WWE. I think this was indirectly mentioned even in McIntyre's promo that Orton violated the wellness policy even 3 times, so they amended it so that you could make up your strikes and still be part of the company. So Orton made mistakes, and Orton even acknowledged this in kayfabe that he should have been fired, but he wasn't, because he's always going to be the chosen one, then, now, forever. So all that is great stuff, but you remember how Orton and Cena, for example, had almost a year-long, or twice they had a year-long rivalry. And even Edge and Orton had a very long rivalry going even to 2004, 2006, and then 2010, which was curtailed because of Orton's injury. And Orton and Triple H had a very long rivalry. So the scope for telling long storylines, for telling long stories drawn out over months, is maximized by figuratively milking it. You have to use certain aspects of the storyline to keep the audience engaged. Initially, why are they fighting with each other? What is their conflict? This match could have been set up by just saying that Orton is on a roll and Drew McIntyre is going to face the Legend Killer, the man who won the greatest wrestling match ever. He beat Edge, he punted Christian, he beat Big Show, he also punted Ric Flair, or not. He also punted Shawn Michaels, or not. Bad selling from Shawn Michaels. But anyway, that was enough as a storyline. But Drew, using this very meaty, important conflict already, has made it seem as if it's not going to be a long-term feud. Because how could it be? What else is there? And it's been a characteristic feature of Drew's reign so far. He's beaten Bobby Lashley. He's beaten Seth Rollins. He's also beaten, who else? Dolph Ziggler twice. So with Ziggler, there was a story, and he could get 2 matches out of that. And there was a chance for more if Ziggler was not treated as such a joke. With Seth Rollins, there's still room for maybe some more matches in the future, which could be served well if Seth Rollins, as I want to see, wins his match against Dominick. But that's besides the point. There's a separate narrative going on. Longer narratives are not possible if you just throw the kitchen sink at the first possible moment. So Orton versus McIntyre could have been, and still maybe they find a way to keep things interesting by having more stipulations, more people show up, maybe Shawn Michaels becomes part of it, maybe Ric Flair becomes part of it, but it's just difficult to stay interested for a longer, drawn out storyline when you just, you've spent all the conflict or the intensity in the lead up to one match. But anyway, that was my side gripe. As for my prediction, what do I want to see happen? I want Drew McIntyre to win his first title defense at a very important event. I want that feather on his cap. And that is the only reason why I want to see Drew McIntyre win the match. That said, Orton can't lose because he's on a tear, as is well documented. Orton is probably the most interesting he's been in his entire career, maybe barring 2009. I hear voices in my head. The Viper Randy Orton, IED Randy Orton, the one who punted Vince McMahon, kissed Stephanie McMahon while she was unconscious in front of her husband, Triple H, who was handcuffed to the ropes. That Randy Orton was probably the peak. But I could entertain the argument that Orton is the best he's ever been. And he beat Edge in the greatest wrestling match ever. And since then, he's just been firing on all cylinders, as everyone has said. So he just can't lose. He can't lose clean. And this is not taking anything away from McIntyre. McIntyre is a made man, and Orton is a made legend. So losing, who has more to lose by losing? From the company's standpoint, I believe Orton losing actually damages the company a little more than McIntyre losing. Because you can make an argument that longer title reigns define people, and Cena had that, Orton had a semi-long title reign, but in terms of number of reigns, I think you need more people who are going to be multiple-time world champions. And I know that's not a very popular way of thinking, but in my eyes, Orton is the man who can't lose per se. And that contradicts what I want to see happen, which I've said that I want McIntyre to win. Why? Because I want his resume to read that he defended his title successfully at SummerSlam. I want a screwy finish in which McIntyre wins, but he doesn't cheat. It's just that it happens that Orton put his foot on the rope, or his foot was below the rope, or something like that. After, say, 3 Claymore kicks, and Orton doesn't kick out, but he has the consciousness, say 2 Claymore kicks. I wouldn't want the finisher to be abused, as it was at WrestleMania. But Orton has to lose. If he has to lose, then he loses with some shenanigans going on. Which would then, and we're still in the universe where I'm talking what I want to see happen. So in this universe, McIntyre would win his match at SummerSlam, forever having that on his resume. Then Orton wins at Payback, with maybe some help from Ric Flair, with the theory that the lights flickered before Orton punted Ric Flair, and we never actually saw contact, meaning that Ric Flair could be in Orton's corner, show up, giving the impression to McIntyre that Ric Flair is there to help McIntyre, but instead Ric Flair screws McIntyre and helps Orton win. So to balance the scales at Payback, still where McIntyre won at SummerSlam, and at Payback Ric Flair can come and assist Orton in winning, also contributing to the swerve that has been speculated, where Orton is champion and he holds the championship until, say, Royal Rumble or even TLC, I don't mind. I'm sorry, that was a call that happened. Anyway, so with that said, what do I think is going to happen? The practical finish is going to be Randy Orton winning. WWE logic. Also, I do realize that Orton is the one with more momentum, even though McIntyre is a perfect champion. He's an established star. even if Orton wins, you have to make sure that McIntyre is protected. So that is my official prediction. My official predictions are as follows. Asuka losing to Bayley, but then winning against Banks, title change. Apollo Crews retaining against MVP. Mandy Rose winning, sending Deville out of the WWE for those personal reasons. Then Angel Garza and Andrade beating the Street Profits for the Raw Tag Team Championships. Dominick Mysterio winning his debut match against Seth Rollins. I don't like that, but that's what I predict. The Fiend beating Strowman for the Universal Championship title change. Randy Orton beating Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. Those are my official predictions. Let's see what happens. I believe I'll be doing a review of the show not too far in the future. I look forward to it. It's going to be a very interesting, very unpredictable night, which is what makes this more rewarding to do. I will see all of you soon, and thank you for those who lasted the entire video.